Welcome to the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels that they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across a table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Before we begin, I want to be clear about where this conversation continues. This episode is part of a transition from Chapter 3 Stigma into a new body of work called More Than Capable. During this transition period, some episodes of the Chapter 3 Stigma feed will be shortened. If you want the full conversation and to be a part of the continued work moving forward, please pause here and subscribe to the More Than Capable podcast on your listening platform now. The More Than Capable podcast link will also be available in the Chapter 3 Stigma description. I look forward to the shared continued pursuit of the More Than Capable vision. With that, let's begin. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by Alyssa, my wife, not in our usual recording location. So here we go on what will be attempt number 2 at this full episode. We already recorded a full-length one, and we battled some pretty horrendous echo. So, you ready?
I'm here for it.
Okay. You got the mic in the right place. We just had a long discussion about this.
Hopefully, otherwise.
Yes. It is kind of interesting. I was when I was listening to the first just snippets of it to get an understanding of the quality and seeing how horrible it wound up being just in the area we were recording and using some new software that I quickly bailed on for this second recording. But it is kind of fitting that we are doing this particular conversation here because I was thinking about it leading up to tonight. I was a little bit annoyed that we had to do a second recording, but we've had a lot of difficult conversations on these couches. On this couch. We've had 2 different couches in this particular room, and we've talked about it before. We've talked about how when I was struggling with my drinking, how we didn't want to have these long, drawn-out conversations, and it was almost creating a bad aura in the space and with the objects and like the couch being kind of the center of it. Like I would remember walking around as I was like detoxing and things and seeing you on the couch and knowing what was in store and that you wanted to talk, and I was doing everything to avoid it basically.
And we live in a small enough space.
We live in a very small space. Yeah.
The couch is our main piece of furniture.
Right. Right. And so I don't know. It is kind of poetic a little bit because the reason that I wanted to have you on the conversation is talking about what I see as more so the sunsetting of Chapter 3 Stigma as a body of work and not fully stepping away, but just kind of redirecting focus and energy towards what I see as something almost broader and a bit of a higher purpose, I guess, if you want to call it that. But it's been something that we've talked about on and off, and I did kind of spring the idea and like I'm gonna put it into action this week on you pretty quickly. But we've definitely taken time to discuss like with feedback that I'd receive from Chapter 3 Stigma and just kind of like charting the course for where I want it to go and really not wanting to drag it out, and ultimately what we wanted to see become of the work, and that is to ultimately help someone who is either feeling like they're at the end with trying to find a solution to their struggle with going to alcohol, going to a different substance of choice, or as we've kind of learned through this process of creating this body of work, the loved ones, being there for the loved ones of the addict or the alcoholic.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
so,
please.
One thing that really stands out to me with all of this is just like, I mean, it's kind of like life. Like there's your personality and what we go through is more dynamic than just, you being an alcoholic and that's solely your purpose of and only focus in life, is, at this point trying to assist others in whatever way you can through your own pursuits. So I think that it's just a natural morphing of what this started out as and what you've had, connection with in terms of other guests that have been on the podcast and just where the information's taking you. It's like, well, what is this? How do I draw this back to my original topic? And so, with that being said, I think that's where the natural progression has come through to maybe making a shift here at this point.
Right.
And something I said in our first recording, which I'll say again, is that, you never wanted the body of work of Chapter 3 Stigma to be something that was overwhelming for someone to come into. You've always said, like, I kept my episodes short specifically because I wanted it to be bite-sized. I wanted it to be something that someone who was struggling was able to pick up and listen to in small pieces, because the big, long, drawn-out episodes that you could talk about and you could have expounded upon the topics that you did in further detail, that would have been really difficult. And even sometimes you did break up certain episodes to make it a little bit more bite-sized. So, sticking true to that mentality, I think this is just that natural progression of where you're headed to next.
Yep. That's perfectly put. And it hits on really the two outcomes of that I was hoping to get from this episode, which is how and why we're basically wrapping up Chapter 3 Stigma, what that means, what's left, and how it will be available moving forward. And then also what is next. So starting with the sunsetting is really the phrase I keep coming back to of Chapter 3 Stigma. Really well, let me back up. I always wanted to approach these episodes and I would try to visualize myself in my lowest state. And that would be the moments where I was physically curled up in our basement, where I would be in a sweatshirt with the hoodie up and drawn and just like wanting it all to be over. Not necessarily in a suicidal manner, but in just I wanted the pain. I wanted the relief I wanted the pain to end and the relief to be found. And I was so scared because I didn't know where to go for that relief except for alcohol. And I knew and I could see how it was tearing our life apart. And so I always tried to direct the message, the conversation for that individual. And over the course of the summer, when I did step away, it gave me a chance to look at the body of work and just be like, how is that person, that myself that I visualize, how are they ever supposed to find their way to kind of those hard-hitting episodes that are early on, that are that connection to the real struggle, the real madness that can free someone from thinking that they're alone in battling this out, and give them the glimmer of hope that there could be a solution, there could be a relief in a manner in which they go through life and being able to deal with the hardships and the struggles without going to alcohol or without going to their substance of choice. And my real big concern about coming back to the podcast was I'm just going to bloat that more. I'm going to create more episodes, more content for that person to sift through. And so even though I came back with the podcast, and I think it was the right thing, and it's been really energizing to do, always deep inside, it's like, I have to make this more available for that person. And so what's going to happen specific to chapter 3 Stigma is there are going to be some episodes that kind of put the cap on it. And specifically, I want those episodes to be highlighting content in various recovery books that really covers the family and the relationships after someone enters into recovery. It's just been the biggest learning for me stepping into this space, that dealing with and managing and strengthening the relationships that do matter the most is the most difficult part about living in recovery. It's not about, at least for me, it hasn't been about fighting urges or cravings or desires. It has been about navigating the setbacks and the road bumps that come along with the most important relationships. So I feel like that's a really fitting way to kind of cap that body of work off. And then the podcast will always be available. Everything is going to be centered for the time being around the Substack page. So there will be like access to the chapter 3 Stigma body of work there. It'll be available on all the streaming platforms. That's like a very negligible cost to keep all of that up and available. And then ultimately, I do have a couple projects still in the works specific to chapter 3 Stigma. We haven't talked about it much, but the garbage can stickers are actually in the closing phases of being ready, which is awesome. Have you mentioned
the garbage can stickers?
I did like vaguely on one post, but
why don't you re-describe it?
Yeah. So, one behavior that I had when I was drinking was I was consuming so much alcohol that I had to get rid of the can. I couldn't use our own recycling canister or garbage canister to get rid of all of the empties and really all the evidence. And so what I would do is it would get stockpiled in our home. And then I had various dump locations that were essentially like park garbage cans. I would drive alleyways and find other people's bins to just dump in. And you were doing anything to just spread your cash out so that, no one could really fully understand the accumulated volume that you were drinking. And it was probably the activity that caused the most amount of shame for me, in all honesty. Like it was a gut wrenching behavior of mine, and I hated it. But I would hit a point where my hiding spots in the house would be overflowing, and I just had to do something about it. And anyway, early, and I had, in talking with people in rehab and AA when I first got out, it was like I came to an understanding I was not the only person that did that. I grew quite comfortable that like that's not a just Kyle behavior. But the most just the craziest experience was one day I was working, and I work overlooking our alleyway.
This is in recovery.
Yeah, in recovery. So I'd been in recovery for under a year. But I was working one morning, and I overlook our alleyway, like I said, and I saw a vehicle pull into the alleyway. And we live in a small, tight-knit neighborhood, so we basically know everyone's vehicles. And right away, I just had this sinking feeling in my gut seeing this vehicle because I didn't recognize them. Just with the time of day that it was a very odd time for a strange vehicle to be driving through our alleyway. And I stopped what I was doing and I just watched. And sure enough, they pulled actually up to our recycling bin, window rolled down. I couldn't see the driver. I saw them stick a hand out. Something got dumped in our recycling bin, and then they tore off, like going pretty fast for a tight alleyway. And by this time I had like stepped outside, and I don't know what I was really going to do, if I wanted to like get their attention, and like there's no way I could run them down. There were like two fences in the way, but it was just really surreal to basically see a ghost of yourself. And just in that moment, I just kind of thought about all the different garbage cans and all the kind of like, goof off like stickers that and decals that you'll see plastered on some of the various public places. And it was just kind of like, why don't I put something there when someone is doing something that they feel so ashamed of, like just absolutely gutted with how they're behaving, to just tell them that they're not alone. And so anyway, though that sticker concept has been in my mind since that moment. And again, it is a really shameful and common and like powerful moment to catch someone at, if you can not catch them in like an outing them way, but just like planting a seed.
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things too, Kyle, where you'll see like, I mean, you'll never know if these stickers make an impact, but it's not all that different from the original desire concept to do the podcast. Like if you can just help at least one person,
yeah,
then it's worth all the time
right.
that you put into this.
Right.
And so I think the same holds true for that concept as well.
No, exactly. Yeah. And so things like I have these smaller projects that I want to see through specific to Chapter 3 Stigma. And again, keeping them up and available is really not much time, effort, cost, anything like that. And then finally, like really just thinking through wanting to get that concise, like really quick hit, almost like greatest hits concept for that person that is in the total depths of despair. I have thought through like going back and sort of compiling, say like 10 to 14, 15 of what I would see as like the key episodes, and make those available across various streaming platforms. It would be different. Like technically speaking, it's different than a podcast because you could compile it and make it available in a few different manners and through different channels. But just kind of pushing for that and really feeling like I can wrap up this body of work sufficiently and move on to what feels like is the natural next step. And I think within that next step, there is certainly going to be talks of addiction, recovery. I will forever draw from this experience that I've gone through, but I feel like I've been being pulled in this direction for quite some time, really. In shortly, just a few short months after we lost Lucy, I started hearing this and feeling called in this direction. And so with the sunsetting of Chapter 3 Stigma, really the redirection and the new focus is going to be in the form of a body of work titled More Than Capable. The number of conversations between Alyssa and I that we've had, with other people, but they've all been incredibly memorable for me for one reason or another. But just the sheer number of people that when they hear our story, either just a portion of it or the full thing, and they look at us and just kind of go, I don't really know what to say, but I just don't think I could handle or I could do or I could make it through what you went through. And it's a little upsetting, I think, for me to hear more than anything. And really, I just want to grab the person by the shoulders and shake them and just, especially for me, be like, you don't understand what a mess I was. You don't understand how poorly I thought about myself, how poorly things were going in our lives, how completely incapable of making it through a single day I was. And I did it. We did it. And kind of the point, I think, of where I want to drive the work is like, this is anti-motivation. This is anti-self-help, because I think what we have learned and what we have seen is just the power that comes through community, the power that comes through pulling people close, from believing in yourself, yes, but from breaking things down in a manner that like you can do these small steps, right? Like when we were going through the trials with Lucy, both during the pregnancy and after the loss, it was like, I mean, we had to break things down to like within the hour and just like focus on that. And it just kind of hits on this concept that I've seen across all areas of life, like the hobbies that I do, the professional world that I'm in. It's just like people greatly overestimate what they can get done in a single day. And they falter at that. And then they're like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not motivated enough. And, I got to figure that out. And conversely, and most unfortunately, is they completely undersell what they can get done over a long period of time. But that comes with just incredible daily practices and daily discipline. And when it comes down to it, it is really the most boring, unsexy practices and processes, but it's truly incredible what people can do in their lives by taking that approach. And I've just found myself compelled and passionate about exploring this space. Like, why don't people believe in themselves? Like, it's this weird harmony that is required between being content with yourself, loving yourself, and being okay with who you are at this moment, but still understanding that there's more. And that was a walk that I couldn't do before. I would just berate myself. I hated myself. And it was like, I think from the outside looking in, it's like, oh boy, he has high standards. Like he's a high achiever. He's really a go-getter. And it's just like, yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think I really just hated myself when it came down to it, and I couldn't walk that line. And I think you can tell at this point, like, I'm searching for the words. I'm trying to fit the language to this experience that we've had in this area that I want to explore and learn more. And I think the point is that I'm struggling right now, and I think that's why I'm excited and why I want to push in this space. Do you have something?
I was just gonna
just perked up.
And that's the point.
Yes, so. Exactly. And so, again, I think everything is largely going to, there will be a new podcast feed. So as a part of this, people will have to go to the More Than Capable podcast page, either, again, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'll have it on YouTube as well. Those have kind of been the main ones. And please do subscribe. I think one of my biggest fears of making this change is kind of like,
lose your tens of followers.
Yeah, lose my tens of followers. Like it's such a small but important group. But no, I think, genuinely speaking, it's like, I think the point of this is, if this next step doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to take it. Chapter 3 stigma is going to be there, but this is something I have a lot of energy around. And yes, there's an intimidation and fear about like the restart. Like I thought about, do I just use the same feed and, basically bring the followers and subscribers in? But I don't think that's right. And so, you specifically, you as a listener, will have to take action with this. This episode in particular will post to both streams. So it will be on the Chapter 3 Stigma. If that's where you're listening to this, I'll put it in the show description as well, but you'll have to go to the More Than Capable podcast feed and subscribe there. And I would also add, please subscribe and rate, because as petty as that sounds, those things do help other people to find the work. And I view this as quite important and imperative. I've just been, honestly, as we've stood on our own feet, or started standing on our own feet lately, I have been really kind of shocked as we've grown and sort of express ourselves within the community at how many people share in these struggles. And so anyway, if there are people out there looking for this type of content, the subscription or following and then rating certainly help. And so with that, again, there will be additional episodes of Chapter 3 Stigma. I think they're largely going to follow the kind of OG monologue format to which feels right to close things out. But yeah, that's the plan. A little bit not intimidated, but again, just kind of like, oh, it's a bit of a lot of work. But I think that's the point. And I think, the amount of energy and passion that I have, that we have, will get us through those tougher times. So,
well, and I don't know, I think it's kind of funny, but you've finished chapter 3 of the book.
I did. Yes.
So, which was the whole point,
right?
Of the original podcast.
Yeah. Maybe it is kind of worth. I think I've said before, the whole plan was like 3 to 5 episodes. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give my story just to sort of lay the base work or lay the foundation, and then we'll get into chapter 3 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We'll wrap this sucker up in 3 to 5 episodes, and it'll be available for people. And yeah, it's
turns out you have a lot more to say.
Yeah, and I'll leave that one there. And I do know that. And I've gotten that feedback. But anyway, no, it's truly been incredible. Like, reflecting back, like, I can't even really believe some of the relationships, conversations that I've had, that we've had through all of this.
Well, and that's really the thing, is like, you've had a lot more to say, but there's reason for it. There's people that have resonated with, and so you were there for them. Yeah.
Well, and I think, culturally we're in a unique time. I think people are starting to look at basically the way we self-medicate, and just we've lost some aspects of how to cope, how to deal with life as a society, as our culture has grown, expanded, yet with the millions of people, we're isolated now more than ever. And I think some of those like aspects of being a human, which is really at the core of more than capable of, with regards to like, how do you just deal with, the human experience that we all have. And I think one of the reasons I'm particularly excited about it is just I feel like there's, as well, maybe it's weird, but like, there's nothing out of the ordinary with myself, with us, even with our story. Like, this is life. And I think that's been one of my big learnings here, is like, there's nothing more human than struggle, striving for progress, for achievement, for purpose. And, I think those higher order type things are why I wanted to wrap up chapter 3 Stigma and take that next step.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you. And then thank you for the talks on walks over the summer, for sure. Even though you didn't maybe realize it, I feel like I was kind of turning this in my head, and, always the gut checks. And one other thing to thank you for on this couch that we mentioned we were recording this on. I also mentioned we dealt with a pretty bad and wicked echo. Thank God we have 17 holiday Christmas pillows on the
please.
couch to act as echo cancellation, sound dampening devices, spread out sporadically.
You count them. There's not 17.
It's very close, and it feels like more.
10.
So,
which is a lot. I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And here, I get a second chance at closing this episode. So as we close every episode together, thank you, and I love you.
I love you too. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you. And thanks all. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others who might find it impactful. And give us a rating through your streaming platform of choice. Ratings and comments help spread the work to others who are desperately searching for a solution. This simple action could have profound impacts on the lives of others. My hope is that my story can help those who feel alone in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and know that this life is full of abundant joy and wonder and is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you must endure. Until next time.